Hey, Bill, how are you today?
Fine.
Very good. Thank you for spending some time with us here
It's
today.
my pleasure.
All right. Why don't we just start off and just saying where you're from?
Well, I was born and raised in a place called College Point, New York. It's part of the city of New York. It's in Queens County.
Okay.
And I was born and raised there. I lived there till 46. And
Oh,
then when I went in the service, my family moved out on Long Island. When I returned, I went there.
gotcha.
So,
What was your deciding factor to go into the military?
well, I originally tried to go in the Navy in the spring of 45, but due to the number of losses in Europe and the Pacific, everybody, all the young guys, 17 years old like me, were going in the Navy. So the draft boards and that lost their quotas, and the Marines also. So they froze, more or less, they lowered the physical requirements or increased the physical requirements in the Navy. So I eventually had to go back for a reevaluation, and I was turned down for the overbite. It was the overbite and color blindness was the two reasons. So then I sat out. The war ended, and I went back to I had dropped out of high school, and I went back to high school, but I didn't complete it. And in June of 46, my father gave me an ultimatum: get a job or go in the Army. So I went down and enlisted in the Army, which was the best thing I did.
Really? Well, that's a really good step off from this. So let me expand upon that. Why do you think it was the best thing that you did?
Well, it led to a good job for 20 years, and then I in Grumman Aircraft, and then I left there, and I ended up. I didn't want to work on aircraft anymore, but I did. I ended up for about 2 years working up in Warner Robins, Georgia, on the C-130s, and then I got into the post office where, through my veterans preference, and that I was able to get in there,
Nice.
and I did my 20 years in there, and I retired. So, I mean, all along the line, it was beneficial in some way to me.
Well, I'm sure it did. It helped you quite a bit as far as being able to learn to deal with.
Well,
other
like I
people.
say, my first job really was because I was a radar man, and the Grumman needed them. They were just starting out on the anti-submarine aircraft, and they needed people, although I was not familiar with that type of gear. But I was hired, and like I said, I went to work there in May of 1949, and I left there in June of 1970. So, but
It's a long time. Did you have any deployments while you were in?
I had spent from October of 47 until April of 49, I was in Alaska,
Okay.
which was really, it was something to see. It looked like when the war ended, they blew the whistle and everybody dropped everything and walked away.
Really?
They had on the base there at Elmendorf in Anchorage,
Elmendorf.
it was Fort Richardson, Elmendorf. They had 500-man barracks under construction, and they had the steel work up, and that's as far as it went, and it sat that way for the rest of my time up there. They eventually completed it, I understand. But while I was in there, I got an opportunity. With the outfit I was in, we were sent a team up to Fairbanks. I was one of 7 of us went, and we got up to Fairbanks. And from Fairbanks, we went out to it was an AC&W outfit, aircraft control and warning, and they had units stationed on various parts of Alaska all the way out to Nome. And we got to go to 2 of them. And one was Clear, and the other was Galena, which was right on the Yukon River,
Yes.
which during the war had been a base where the Russians had come in and would pick up planes that were being ferried over to Russia. So there's a history up there of that. So, like I say, and then, well, in Fairbanks, they decided they wanted to put an additional radar system down in Galena, and we dismantled the one that was in Fairbanks, helped dismantle it, and they took it on barge, which we got to ride the barge down the 700 miles to Galena on the Yukon River, which is a great experience. And it was really unreal. because there are only two ways to get to Galena. One was by river and one by air.
True.
And that the river trip was really wonderful.
I had a TDY up in.
Pardon me?
I had a TDY up in
Oh.
Elmendorf.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
up in
well,
Elmendorf for a while.
Well, I don't know what it is. I know my brother-in-law was up there in the 60s, was 50s or 60s. And they were in the 500-man barracks then.
So it's interesting to hear your
Yeah.
version of it, knowing what I've
Well-
seen and how it used to be.
Well, in Galena, they had the Quonset huts left over, and the housing, they had regular houses there. In fact, they had a 35-foot high dike around the field to prevent the field, because it's right on the edge of the Yukon River. And in 44 and 45, it had been flooded, and there was high water marks in the hangar where the water had come in, and it was well up
That's
above
a lot.
that. So they put this 35-foot dike up around Galena, and it was really, well, it's in the middle of nowhere, really, but it's, we had a lot of fun there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Are there any prominent memories that stick in your head from your service, like a certain story? Or
Well, like I say, that one, and that was the key one, really. And like I say, just being in Alaska in those days, it wasn't a part of the state. It was still a territory, and it was still more or less the final frontier.
Right.
Uh,
Still is technically.
yes. Well, like I say, you
developed
watch
quite a
it.
bit.
You're still.
Yeah.
The only way you can really get around is by plane or a float plane in the winter, or in the summer, and ski planes in the winter. I don't know. There's very few. Well, I think there's only one railroad from Anchorage to Fairbanks, maybe to Sitka, to the capital. And the only way you can get to the capital is by boat
Right.
or air.
Yeah, Sitka.
Yeah.
Never been to Sitka. So. And so, how long did you serve for?
I was in there altogether about 3 years, just shy of 3 years. I had accumulated 60 days of annual leave, so instead of having me serve out the full time, they paid it off, and I got out.
Early out.
I got out in April of '49. Then I went to work for Grumman for 20 years.
There you go.
And I worked in Grumman when I first got there. They were finishing up the F-8F contract, the fighter. And I was hired to work on the AF-2Ws, the anti-submarine aircraft. We made two models of that, the Hunter version and the Killer. The Hunter version was the 2W, the 2S was the Killer. And it was two different airplanes. It was the largest single-engine plane that the Navy had for carrier operations at the time.
Okay.
And then they finally converted it down to the S2F, and I worked on them, and the F9. I worked on the complete series F9s, and the S2Fs and SA-16. I worked on all the military aircraft that Grumman was producing in that period of time,
Right.
with the exception of the F-14 that was just coming in when I was leaving.
Well, it says, were there? Do you feel like any part of the military experience helped shape you as the man you are today?
Pardon me?
Do you feel like any part of your military experience helped shape you?
Yes, I think it did give you a different view.
Yeah.
I thought it was when I look back upon it, I went to places I never would have went to in my life. I went to Texas, I went to Florida, California, Alaska, you know, I mean, and most likely I've been still in New York. If I hadn't, I'd be traveling the BMT to Manhattan, you know.
VFD. When did you come out here to Florida?
Well, we come down here in 1970 we moved down here, and then I moved up here to Dunedin in 73,
Oh, wow.
and then we were here from 73 to 2006, and my wife and I, we moved out to Austin, Texas, and my wife, we passed away in 21, just at the beginning of COVID, and then I come back to Dunedin because we had 5 children, and 3 of them living here in the area, and 2 of them were in Texas. So I had a medical problem there in March of 2023, and we figured I'd best come back here because there's 3 of them here to take care of me, and my other daughter out there in Austin, she had taken care of my wife and me, but she needed a break.
I'm sure.
So I'm back here in Dunedin where I started in 1973. I'm back here.
So it's safe to say you're a staple of the community at this point.
Well, it has changed. I
Yeah.
will say that. You don't really recognize the place
Really?
in that period of 2 years, from 2006 until now.
Uh-huh.
How far? I mean, they showed. They used to have Grant Field, where the Toronto team played, and I saw it one day and I said, "Well, that can't be Grant Field, a new modern stadium here." You know, and that was on television on one of the.
Yes, I've only been out here
brilliant.
for 4 years, so
Yeah.
what I see is what I get.
In fact, in Texas, some of the high schools in Texas, I got stadiums, football stadiums, that make the pro teams look like nothing.
Yeah,
You know.
let's try that. Well, that's pretty much it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of what else there could be here. I mean, I know you served our country, you served it well. I served it in a time where this country was needing men like you.
Well, like I say, it's an awful turmoil period,
Right.
the last 20, 30 years. I mean, like I say, it's really a crime for what they do to the guys there going to the Far East, to the Middle East there. They should have recreated the draft and made everybody part of it. This one using only 1% of the population and rotating those guys in there it's awful when you see 8 and 10 tours of duty. And I don't see how those guys can do it.
Numbers are down. So, with all your years, if you could do it all over again, would you? And if you would you do anything different?
Well, I think I would have taken advantage of the GI Bill.
Okay.
Maybe went on to college, but I just wasn't. I just couldn't see going back to school at that. But now, of course, hindsight's always much better. Yeah.
2020. And if you had any advice for, say, a younger person who is thinking about doing the military, what kind of advice do you think you'd
Well, I personally think that every young man, and well now women too, should go in and spend at least 2 years in the military. You go out and you meet, of course, not at the shooting time, but in the peacetime, you go out and you meet people you never would have met in your entire life. I met people from all walks of life, from all over the country when I was in the service. And some of them were great, and some of them you don't want much to do with. But the average guy was really interesting.
I know you were only in for that short time, but are there still some people that you talk to from the military?
Most of the people I was in are gone. You know.
Well, that's something to be said that you're still here.
Yeah. You know, like there's only I have 3 cousins that are left from my generation. All the rest of them are gone. Everybody. So.
Well, Bill, curious, a man like you, what would you say would be an anecdote or a quote that you live by to keep you where you're at today?
Well, you know, respect everybody.
Yes.
You know, that's about the best thing to do.
Yes.
We got to get along. The visions we have in the nation today are just unreal. We can't go on this way.
No. At all. It's a hugely different world we live in today, for sure. That being said, listen, I greatly appreciate you sharing some of your knowledge, your history, your experience with us. I want to thank you on behalf of ourselves and the Pinellas County Veterans Association for being part of this project that we're working on. Your information, your story is going to be archived in History of Florida here. And I want to thank you for your bravery and courage for going into the military and taking the time to share that with us here today.
Right.
Thank you so much,
Right.
Bill. Appreciate you.
Right.